I'm so delighted to have one of the leading neuroscientists here with us today to talk about not only the brain, but the wisdom of the brain and the power of mentorship. Right here in the Cafe of Dreams, I'd like to welcome Mark Waldman. Welcome to the Cafe of Dreams, Mark.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here.
And I saw you having lunch
with some of my favorite friends.
With some of your favorite friends. Now, the Cafe of Dreams, as I have mentioned before, is an imaginal place where everything is possible, where anything is possible. And I actually saw Mark having lunch today with 3 other amazing minds. I know that you will recognize these names because they are the hallmark of psychoanalytics as well as leaders in the whole field of psychology, as well as Mark is. So he was having lunch today with Sigmund Freud, with Carl Jung, and with Bruno Bettelheim. And that was a foursome, and I happened to be so lucky to catch your eye, Mark, and bring you right on over here. It must have been an amazing experience to have lunch with those gentlemen.
It was very uncomfortable for me because every time I picked up my sandwich and I looked at it, and I practiced something called mindful eating, where you take the time to savor the food and whatever else, and then bite into it. Freud would turn to me and say, "Why are you eating that sandwich in such a sexually provocative way?"
That would be a hard luncheon to get through, actually. But
well, to paraphrase Freud, I'll have to say back to him, sometimes a sandwich is just a sandwich.
That's right. Sometimes a sandwich is just a sandwich. I have heard that. Mark, the reason that I know that those are your favorite lunch mates is that we had a conversation beforehand, and I was actually asking you, who are your favorite mentors? Who are the people who mentored you? And those were a few of the names that came forward. So let me ask you again, Mark, because we always love to talk about the power of mentorship, not only having a mentor, but being a mentor. So I first would love to start to ask by what is and who were your favorite mentors?
When you forewarned me that this was going to be the question that you were going to ask me, 4 names popped into my mind. Mm-hmm. And then I thought to myself, you know, I don't even know what a mentor actually is. So I'm going to turn the tables on you and ask you what your definition of a mentor is, and then I'll share with you how I've been reflecting on that for the last 24 hours.
Oh, excellent. Well, my definition of a mentor is someone who actually changes your life for the better at a deep place, someone that you will remember forever because that person had a marked impact on you. And it could be for many different reasons. It could be that that person helped you move in the direction of your soul's calling, or it could be someone who helped you to live from a particular quality that you became so enamored with, maybe the quality of peace or love, or some quality that you began to really embody for the rest of your life. Or it could be someone who just motivated you in a way that no one else could have, or who said something that moved you in a way that no one else could have. And then finally, I think a mentor, my definition of a mentor is someone who sees in you something that you never could have seen in yourself.
So I thought about that. And I would open up Webster's dictionary, and all it says about a mentor is a coach or a teacher. And I thought, well, I've had hundreds of coaches and teachers, but it doesn't seem to touch upon that quality of mentorship. So I thought and thought and thought about it, and I usually like to do kind of a meditation. So I'll use a mindfulness bell or something like that. I'll ring it, I'll breathe deeply, I'll relax. Mm-hmm. And I began to visualize all of the different teachers and the people who I felt were mentors in my life. And to me, what came to me intuitively is that a mentor is a combination of 4 types of people.
Oh, goody.
A teacher, a healer, a coach, and a very unique type of friend.
Oh,
And if I was to put all of those together, then I would say I've really only had one mentor in my life who transformed my worldview, my work, shaped virtually everything I did 20 years ago, continues to influence everything I do today, and will probably be my model for how I would like to be a mentor for others.
tell us, who was that one person? Because the reason this is important is you happen to be, in this generation, one of the world's most renowned spokespersons for neuroscience, and I happen to know that you have a tremendous impact on the world, and your work is continuing to have a tremendous impact. So we're all very curious to know who mentored such a magnificent person such as you. Who was that?
So basically, I have been preoccupied with what the nature of human consciousness is. Secondarily, I've always been preoccupied with why I've always had so much low self-esteem. Putting those two together, I can give you briefly a history of the mentors that ranged from teacher, healer, coach, and then that broad, unique type of friendship that creates what I call an aha experience, that moment of transformation that just changes your belief system, your worldview, and enlightens you from inside to out. So, in your opening comment in that imaginary lunch that I was having with Freud, and I'll oftentimes have an imaginary conversation with Freud,
Do you?
because I was originally raised in the psychoanalytic tradition, but by some very awful therapists. Terrible, terrible background. And it was very confusing because they tried to blend psychoanalysis or psychotherapy with a spiritual perspective as well. And they didn't do a very good job of it. Jung did a much better job. In about 1989, and I know the year so clearly because it was the year before my son was born, I was invited by one of the most famous psychoanalytic people in the world, Bruno Bettelheim, to join a group of 6 of us who were struggling with our low self-esteem as we attempted to practice therapy and spiritual counseling and coaching to others. And so Bettelheim, I had always considered to be my mentor until you asked me this question the other day. And I thought, no, Bettelheim was the best teacher that I ever had.
Wow.
And Bettelheim did something very amazing. I was involved in many forms of alternative psychologies and psychotherapies, body work, breathing work, Reichian therapy, all the kind of new age, new thought, humanistic psychology stuff, and we were experimenting with absolutely everything.
Yes.
There were people, and I was involved with some Reichian therapy, and there you have a person lie down on a table, breathe deeply, deeper and deeper. You may push on certain parts of their body, they'll start to yell and scream and cry and bring up old emotions from the past. I mean, this is wild, crazy stuff from the 60s and 70s and 80s. And suddenly, Bettelheim's first question to me was, well, Mark, tell me a little bit about the type of work you've been doing in your past. And I'm extraordinarily,
He asked you.
Look, in the hierarchy of psychoanalysts, Freud is number 1, Jung is number 2, but Bruno Bettelheim was number 3.
And he asked you that question.
And he asked me that question, and I told him the truth. I told him that I did Reichian therapy, expecting him to tear me to shreds, have people lie down on mats, breathe deeply, yell and scream, revisit their memories and whatever else. And he turned to me and he said, "Oh, you mean Willy Reich? He was my closest friend back when we were in Germany." And what he did, instead of criticizing me for these outrageous experimental therapies I was
Right.
doing, he told our group his story of whom he considered to be one of the most brilliant people in the world, because Reich was pretty much ostracized even by the psychoanalytic. His ideas were so radical that,
Is that right?
even the psychoanalytic group couldn't handle them. And in that moment, he made me feel okay that wherever I was in my work and development, that was okay. And with that little tiny opening, then he could teach and mentor us to how to become better therapists.
That's like an acceptance, isn't it? Like you're okay, there's something within you that is fine. It's accepted, and it helped you to really have a level of self-esteem that perhaps was lacking 1 second before then.
Yes. And Bettelheim is famous for his extraordinary work with working with some of the most seriously disturbed children in the world. And he wrote a very famous book called The Uses of Enchantment. But
He's no longer alive, right?
No, no, he died 2 years after our group was formed. And the most amazing thing happened shortly after he died. I had my first and second, what I would call genuine mystical experiences. And the first one was simply to suddenly find myself being present and connected to absolutely everything. My office, the tree, the wall, the grass, the telephone pole, and everything else. I went, wow, this is what all those Hindus and Buddhists were talking about.
Yes.
And it totally changed my spiritual orientation. And then a few months after that, which is right before Bettelheim, or I think right after he had died, I had a second mystical experience that lasted for about 10 seconds. And it was a thought feeling that came through, and it just said, Mark, you don't know anything about psychoanalysis, or spirituality, the two things I had devoted the last 10 years of my life to. And when you have those profound aha experiences, you go, you can't deny it because it's your basic innermost truth. And that set me on a course of doing obsessive reading to the point that within a couple of years, I was up to reading and reviewing 300 academic books a year for the Transpersonal Review. And in that process, I had other mentors and teachers who helped to guide me through that process of collecting all of this information in the world and finding ways to briefly boil it down into a paragraph or two. Can you imagine taking an entire academic textbook and pass on the wisdom of that textbook in one paragraph?
No. Was there someone who actually helped you, that you would attribute a mentor to, that helped you in that capacity?
Yes. That was Miles Vick. He was the president.
Miles Vick.
Yes, he was the president of the Association for Transpersonal Psychology, which was the exploration of human consciousness, psychedelic experiences, transcendent states of consciousness, and also how you could use different elements of spiritual practice and bring them into psychotherapy to enhance it. It was a very important movement founded by Abraham Maslow. And Miles mentored me by encouraging me how to convey transpersonal psychology to the world in these very brief sound bites, and he helped me put together the most astonishing board of editors for the Transpersonal Review. And so, you know, it was like an incredible experience to be offering wisdom to the brightest therapists, psychologists, spiritual leaders, religious leaders throughout the world.
Absolutely, and you're still doing that.
I hope.
Yes, you are.
Then my marriage fell apart. And that was
happens, yes.
That was very painful. My son was, the year is very clear, it was 1992, 93. And that's when I encountered, so Bettelheim would have been my teacher. This is when I encountered, I would say, the most profound healer in my life.
As a mentor, a healer.
Yes.
Okay.
And he was Joseph Natterson, and he was very famous for a new school of psychoanalysis called intersubjectivity theory. And in the interview, because I was looking for a therapist who could help me deal with my emotional feelings and
Sure.
insecurities and low self-esteem that was still going on
And
at
sure,
that time.
pain, so forth, emotional pain
Yeah.
and sadness.
Yeah, I mean, what went wrong? I mean,
What went wrong?
I mean, my
Right.
first book, and my first book was an anthology, The Art of Staying Together, and I put it together while going through a divorce.
I see.
So you can see the irony in
I
that.
do.
So he sat this close to me in the interview, which is extremely uncomfortable because, as all of you know about therapists, they tend to sit
Yeah.
further apart, and the psychoanalyst actually sits out of sight. You can't even see him. And here's a world-famous psychoanalyst leaning into me, and he's asking me some questions, and I say something. I have no idea what I said. He said, "Oh, Mark, you're an intellectual." And whatever my facial expression was, it took him a half a second to recognize. He said, no, I mean that as a compliment.
He saw in your face that you were afraid it was a criticism, or
I've always, prior to that time, I've been criticized for being in my head.
I see, an intellectual in your head
Yeah,
and
always
not in your
lost
heart.
in
as
the
a-
realm, in the
okay.
realm of thoughts.
Okay.
And in my heart, I'm sorry, because as I got involved in neuroscience, I have moved the heart to the anterior cingulate, but that's
Okay.
a different matter entirely. That one statement turned my life around in the most spectacular way. Nobody had ever complimented me on my mind. And my
In a
mind,
healing way.
yes, because he's
Okay.
a therapist.
Yes.
This is a healing environment. And one sentence can do it. I mean, I would love you, and I would love our audience here and everybody who's watching this, to close your eyes just for a moment.
Okay, let's
If
try.
you want to have a sense of what one of the most important elements for a healer mentor would be, close your eyes and think about something, some teacher you've had, some exchange you've had, and that the message that was imparted to you touched you so deeply that your life changed in some small or dramatic way. And I'll just ring a bell to give you a few seconds to visualize that person and recall that incredible experience that changed your life, perhaps just from a few sentences.